wanted to kill my mother since I was 8 years old, and I'm not proud of that.
Welcome everyone. Today is the Ogre of Aptos, Part 8. Now on April 20th, 1973, Ed had actually came home and called his mother. His mother had informed him that she was going out to a party and that it would be rather late and not to wait up. So Ed had went to the store, got him a 6-pack of beer, sat down and watched television for a while, and then he went down to lay down. As he woke up, it was about 1 o'clock, and he walked into the room to check if his mother was there, and she wasn't, so he went back to bed. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, he went back in, and there he found his mother on the bed reading a book. She looked at him and asked, "What do you want?" He said, "Nothing." He said, "Just wanted to make sure that you were home." To where his mother looked very irritated and said, "Well, I suppose you want to sit up all night and talk now." Tears welled up in Ed's eyes and he said no. And she goes, "Well, I suppose we'll talk in the morning." And he went in his room. As he lay down in his bed, he knew he was going to kill his mother. He went into the kitchen and got a claw hammer and a small knife. And when he walked into his mother's room, had realized that she was asleep. He silently crept up to the edge of her bed, waited a few moments, and he raised his claw hammer up and with all of his strength struck it down on the right side of her temple. He said that you could hear this gurgling sound and blood had rushed down to her face, and there were certain similar sounds that he was familiar with when he had killed those other girls when he was picking up hitchhikers. At which point he would sit there and take the knife and in a circular motion cut around the base of his mother's head, and with one quick crack, cracked her head off. In an interview, Ed would sit there and say, "I'm not a lizard. I was not born under a rock." For years, his mother had sat there and told him, "I haven't had sex for years because of you, my murderous son. I'm not a creature. I came out of my mother's vagina, and in a rage, I went back in. I suppose you want to sit up all night and talk now. God, I wish I had." He would say that killing your mother is not just something you just do, so I wanted to love my mother. After he had decapitated his mother, he performed ear ratio on her decapitated head. And then he did the same thing with the base of the severed part of her neck where he had just decapitated her. And then he violated her corpse. He would then take her corpse, handcuff her hands, and drag it up into a closet and hang it there. He also had cut out her vocal cords and tried to shove them down the sink dispenser, but the tendons were too tough to grind up, which Ed had found amusing because he said, "That makes sense for all the years she had bitched at me through the years." He went back upstairs, grabbed the head of his mother, and placed it on a shelf. At which point he threw darts at it, screamed at it for hours, and began beating it until the face was completely unrecognizable. After he was finished, he went down, cleaned himself up, and called his mother's best friend, who was Sally Hallett. And he had said that he was throwing a surprise party for his mother and asked if she wanted to come over, and she obliged. At this point, he had strangled her and removed her head, performed ear ratio on her decapitated corpse. And he took the severed head and he slept with it that night. When he awoke the next morning, he wrote a little note for the police and placed it on the body of his mother. And he gathered all of his knives and guns and went in a car and just went on a trip, completely prepared for a complete shoot-down with the cops. After a few hours, and cops had not looked for him or anything, he sat down and decided to call the police. When the police answered, He replied, "Hi, my name is Ed Kemper. I am the co-ed killer." At first, the police thought it was some joke, and they told him to call back. And because he had so many friends at the time in the jury room, he would sit there and call back again, asking for a particular cop. And he had told him that he was the co-ed killer. At which point they took him in, and his trial began for all of the murders that he had began. Ironically, when Ed went to trial, he had actually asked for the death penalty. And because they had just disbanded the death penalty in 1973, he was served 8 consecutive life sentences to serve back to back within the prison. Ed has actually attempted to commit suicide twice since he has been incarcerated, and he has been there since 1973. He has had multiple parole hearings. All of them have been denied. He has also stated that he doesn't fault them for that because society is not ready for me in any shape or form. In the movie American Psycho, Patrick Bateman made a statement, "Sometimes when I see a girl, I want to take her out on a date and treat her nice and sweet. And the other half of me wants to know what her head would look like on a stick." The movie would also claim that this was a statement made by Ed Gein, another serial killer. But that is a false statement, because the actual person who made that actual statement is Ed Kemper himself. And that is not the only thing that he has been in society with. In 1974, a horror film by the name Black Christmas came out, and the horror villain of that film was a man by the name Billy Lenz. The writers and creators of the character would go and say that Ed Kemper played a lot of inspiration for the character. Police would also go and say that Ed has been a model citizen while he has been incarcerated. He has actually volunteered for many, many years and has done over 5,000 hours of audiobooks for a local fundraiser for the blind. He actually retired doing that last year. Ed's next parole hearing will be sometime in 2024. He will be 74 years old. I think if we can learn anything from this, and I by no means am condoning the actions of Ed Kemper. He was a very sick man, and his actions are no way excusable. But I also believe that this is just proof that the treatment of our children carries so much weight.